Judge Juan Merchan has delayed Donald Trump's sentencing, which was originally scheduled for next Thursday. The sentencing will now take place on September 18th in order to give Donald Trump's lawyers time to study Monday's Supreme Court opinion and argue to the judge how they think that the Supreme Court opinion should apply in the case where Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felonies for creating false business records to hide a payoff to a porn star, Stormy Daniels. The Supreme Court opinion says the president must therefore be immune from prosecution for an official act unless the government can show that applying a criminal prohibition to that act would pose no dangers of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch. Joining us now, Barbara McQuade, a former U.S. attorney and a law professor at the University of Michigan Law School. She is co-host of the podcast #SistersInLaw and the author of Attack from Within: How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. Barbara, thank you very much for joining us. This moving of the scheduling was something that both sides in the case agreed on. What do you see in the Supreme Court opinion that you would expect Judge Merchan to be thinking about?
Well, Lawrence, as you know, the key inflection point in the court's decision is whether acts are official acts of the president or unofficial acts of an ordinary person. I don't think there is anything in this case, the payment of hush money to a porn star, the falsification of business records to conceal that. I don't think there's any way to characterize any of that as an official act that would be immune from prosecution. I think the only little sliver of possibility of an argument that Trump's team could raise is this other part of the ruling where the Supreme Court said that the prosecution cannot even use as evidence any official act in bringing a case for unofficial conduct. And so in this case, you have to go back to the trial and say, was there anything about this case that was possibly official conduct? I suppose there is an argument that the testimony of Hope Hicks, who was testifying about a conversation she had with Donald Trump when she was a communication staffer for him, is that possibly an official act? I think it's arguable. And so I think that could be the issue. Now, I still think that even if it was erroneous to allow that in, even if Donald Trump did not waive immunity by failing to raise it in a timely fashion, just because there's an error in the trial does not mean the case gets overturned. You have to show that the error would have made a difference in the outcome of the trial. And so I think that makes it all a very uphill battle for Trump's defense team. Yeah,
I was thinking that myself, that you can find what they call harmless error in these proceedings, which, by the way, would be retroactively considered an error because this Supreme Court guidance didn't exist at the time the trial was going on. But that kind of error, the judge still has to look at the totality of the case and look at the verdict and say, would this verdict be sustained without that information?
Yeah, exactly right. So there's this rule referred to as the pipeline rule. And that is any defendant who's still in the pipeline, that is someone who is either awaiting trial, awaiting sentencing, or who's not yet exhausted his appeals, is in the pipeline. And that person gets the benefit of any new law that gets announced by a court. And so because Donald Trump is still in the pipeline, he's awaiting sentencing, he could benefit from this new decision by the Supreme Court. But that does not change the fact that, number one, he did not raise it, an affirmative defense, in a timely fashion in this case. That likely precludes it altogether. But secondly, as you just raised, even if it was an error to admit that sliver of testimony from Hope Hicks, and I'm not sure it is, but even if it was, it is likely a harmless error that did not dictate the outcome of the case. And so that's why I think that Judge Merchan is wise to let the parties litigate it, hear it out, and will likely issue a ruling rejecting this request and move on to sentencing on September 18th.
My new favorite phrase is "in the pipeline." That's going to be a major chapter in historians' account of Donald Trump's presidency. Barbara McQuade, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. And coming up, if you're lucky enough to have seen the